StanceSwitch, the podcast. My name is Brandon. This is going to be my martial arts combat sports podcast where we're going to talk about everything combat sports, the big fights, breakdowns, analysis, just shit like that. Sorry. This is one of the first ones, so forgive me for any errors, mistakes, just lapses in focus and whatnot. This is the very first, or one of the first ones. So there's no big fights coming up, so I had this idea where I'm just gonna go through the UFC Reddit and just kind of talk about what people are talking about. Of course, we're coming off, what was it, UFC 288. Aljo Cejudo. Close fight. It was a closely contested fight. Sometimes I'll watch a fight and score it in real time. Like, I'll just be watching with that kind of perspective where I'm really trying to score it, taking everything into consideration, tallying up points in my head. And then sometimes I'll just watch a fight. These are usually the fights I'm not super invested in. And I'll just throw all that shit out the window and I'll just, watch it for fun, basically. And this was one of those, I didn't really care. I wasn't super excited about it. So I didn't watch with a super critical mind in terms of judging. But I did think that Aljo won at least 3 or 5. But it was a closely contested fight. Aljo's range, I should say his length, was a problem for Cejudo. I've only watched it once, so this just off the top of my head. I remember thinking when I was watching it, his length is giving him a problem. His kicks, which are obviously a component of his length and his distance, his kicks were giving Cejudo a problem. I can't exactly remember what I was thinking Cejudo was, like, what was he failing at? For sure, those aspects of the fight were giving Cejudo a problem, but I just think Cejudo never really got going. So I think we got a glimpse of where he's at athletically and, just in terms of a combat sport where he's at, but I still don't think we got the full picture of it just because Aljo does a good job of nullifying other people's strengths. And if you notice, every fighter who does that, eventually people start to call him boring. They do that with every fighter, from Floyd Mayweather, John Jones now, like the new John Jones, who kind of doesn't take the same kind of risks and he's way more comfortable with just coasting because he knows he's won the round. That's like, it's not as fun to watch, obviously, unless you're a true fan of technique and skill. I always enjoy these fights. Floyd Mayweather is my favorite boxer. John Jones is my favorite UFC fighter. I'm a true fan of technique, so I enjoy watching that process. I enjoy watching Floyd Mayweather employ his techniques and his skill in order to take minimal damage and win the round after round and thus win the fight. I enjoy watching somebody take a plan like that and execute it. A lot of people don't. A lot of people are just, watching the fights and treating it like a football game, how most people treat football anyway. That's how I treat football. It's just I kind of sit down and watch it. And I know about football more than the average person knows about fighting, obviously. But I don't watch it with a critical eye at all just because it's not my sport. I watch it just for whatever, The same way I watch some fights. But then there are other fights where I really I feel more invested. Most of the strikers, everybody who has a striking background, those are usually the people who I gravitate towards. But yeah, 288 is mostly what people are talking about on the Reddit. I don't get on the Reddit, by the way. I just thought this would be a cool idea to see what people are talking about, because I know there's a big MMA community on here. Name the fighter who made you love MMA. It's a picture of McGregor versus Holloway. I feel like I'm in probably a rare camp. I don't know. Let me know if this is rare. But Conor McGregor is one of the main reasons I started watching. How I started watching is because my mom's boyfriend was into it. He was into it before. He was into it when, like, the John Jones era, when John Jones was running through and beating Rampage and Rashad, and that time, my mom's boyfriend was really into it. And I would hear about it, like I know I had heard the name John Bones Jones. That's how my mom's boyfriend always said it. He always said the Bones. So I knew that name, and I knew he was a fighter, but I looked at Cage. I think it was still like on Spike or some shit. So that's how I looked at it, as like a Spike, like just a weird thing on TV that I didn't give a fuck about. You know, I didn't look at it like boxing or something like that. And then, I don't know, I think I started getting into boxing. And from there I found MMA just because I like the idea of being a more complete fighter. So I got into MMA, and then from there I started watching the fights, and that just happened to be when Conor was on the rise. Like I watched the Conor Rafael Dos Anjos press conference when they were supposed to fight. I don't know what card that was, but I watched that press conference live. Like that was when and you know, it's almost like taboo to say that you started watching with Conor, just because I don't know, it just gives off this idea that you like aren't really into the shit. But I was already into boxing. I was into combat sports as an idea, and I like boxing, but that was when I got into UFC specifically. Is during that. So I watched what was that, 202, the rematch with Conor and Nate. I watched that live. I remember watching that live because I was in college and I was supposed to go to the Renaissance Festival, but I skipped it because I recognized not many people, at least in my circle, people were starting to recognize that, oh, this is kind of a big deal. Like I remember me talking about it, and then after the fight, my brother was like, I actually saw somebody talking about that. You know, it still wasn't what it is now. What did we do to deserve such an immaculate card? And it's Volkanovski Rodriguez. This is UFC 290, T-Mobile Arena. Alex Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez. Tough fight. Most smart people are still picking Volkanovski, but smart people also recognize that Yair is you want to say the better striker. He has more tools in his tool belt than Volkanovski, for sure. When it comes to striking, just striking, by the way. In general, he does not. But when we're talking about striking, Rodriguez has more tools in his tool belt. He's more athletic. He's faster. But Volkanovski and his team have just proven to be such smart strategists. They've proven to be such great game planners that, you know, I personally don't expect that to matter that much. Yeah, I just see Volkanovski taking that. And then also on the card, Moreno and Pantoja 2. I'm going to be honest, I didn't see the first one. I think they fought. Pantoja is the same guy who beat Moreno on Ultimate Fighter. I don't know this for sure. Like I said, I didn't really start watching the flyweights, if I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, I've watched the big ones, and I watch most of the fights now, but I'm just not that familiar with all their some of the lower fights that I probably missed. Whitaker and Duplessis. That's an exciting fight just because anytime you get a chance to watch Robert Whitaker fight, you should. Like, that's a fight you gotta watch. But again, Whitaker is just better than Duplessis. So yeah, Whitaker's just better. That's the thing. So it almost just feels like Whitaker should win, and then if anything else on the contrary happens, I don't see it being a case of Duplessis beating Robert Whitaker just because Robert Whitaker is clearly better. The only way you could imagine Duplessis winning is by some kind of mistake, like in judging or something like that. Of course, anything's possible. It's a fight, but that's what I think of when I think of that card. I think of Whitaker winning or just some kind of awful decision, you know. Jalen Turner versus Dan Hooker is on this card too. They were supposed to fight already. I'm pretty sure what happened is that Hooker pulled out, and then that's when Turner ended up fighting Gamrot. I thought, I'm going to be real, I think I heard Chael Sonnen say this. He probably didn't say this. He said something about the idea of it being like a blessing for Hooker that he didn't have to fight Turner. Hooker, let's look at Dan Hooker's record. I didn't plan on doing research, but I just want to make sure I get this right because I fuck with Dan Hooker. Let's see. All right. Okay. So he won at UFC 281. He beat Claudio Puelles with the body kick. I do remember that. It was weird, right? Round 2 with 4 minutes left in the round. That was a weird fight. I somewhat remember it. I don't know who Claudio Puelles is, but I do remember that fight. He definitely needed that win because before that, let's see, he lost to Arnold Allen via TKO. He lost to Islam. That was a short notice fight via submission. And of course, there's like a champion now, so it came off with that. He beat Nasrat Pakrasad, which is Gastelum lookalike. That was a decision, and if I remember correctly, that was a very split decision. It wasn't a split? No, it was unanimous. Okay. Maybe it was just a close fight then. Lost to Michael Chandler. And then before that, lost to Dustin Poirier. That was way back in June of 2020. You can't count him out. I'm glad I looked at the record because I was about to kind of count him out. I fuck with Dan Hooker though, but I was about to count him out. But I don't want to do that. Instead, I just want to say that Jalen Turner is the future of this division. And I know he doesn't have the resume yet. I know he hasn't beat the guys yet that we want to see people beat before we claim that they're the future of a division. But skill-wise, let me just say that skill-wise, he's the future of this division for sure. Now, he could. we got to see him face some wrestlers still. We still have to see him face some people. But skill-wise, he has what it takes. Let me just say that. Let's see. Jalen Turner. So it's 27. Yeah, he's 27. A professional since 2016. Fought in Bellator, World Series of Fighting, King of the Cage. He's ranked number 10 as of October. I'm on Wikipedia, by the way. Let's see. Jalen Turner, San Bernardino, California. Let's see. He had too many injuries. Because, by the way, also, so he's 27, 6'3", 155 pounds. That's a peculiar frame, you know. So he had the opportunity to play other sports for sure. It says he specifically basketball and track and field. That makes sense. He's for sure naturally athletic. You can see it in his striking. But it says he couldn't participate in those because of injuries. Finally, he took up wrestling, but even he couldn't compete in that because he had a broken finger. He started watching MMA, which inspired him to try and practice the sport. He had no money, so he would run and shadow box and use his family's couch as a punching bag. It's on Wikipedia, by the way, so you know. Until he joined Team Adrenaline, which kickstarted his martial arts career. Oh, I didn't know that. Growing up, Turner was arachnophobic, and to overcome that fear, he began to collect tarantulas as pets. I'm gonna just say this. Did it say how old he was when he did that? It just says growing up. So you're gonna assume he was a kid. I'm trying to word this the right way. That's a big psychological sign that you could take from somebody. If you learn that anybody, regardless of age, but especially at a young age, has a fear of something, and then they consciously recognize that I need to overcome this fear. And in order to overcome this fear, I need to dive into it. I cannot let the fear of it hold me back from it. And so then you do the opposite. Instead of staying away from spiders, you decide, I'm scared of spiders. I should start to spend time around spiders to overcome the fear. It shows an inner awareness, a psychological awareness of yourself, impulse control. Those type of things to me show a lot. Think about it. Is that how you in your life right now deal with your fears? Whatever it is you're scared of, and for the most part, we're talking about spiders here, but we could be talking about anything. You know what I mean? If you're, whatever it is, whatever fears you have, whatever brings you anxiety in your life, is that how you deal with it now? Is you dive into it head first to overcome it? Because most people don't. Most people don't. So to do it shows a level of awareness that I like in a fighter. Oh, and then Bo Nickel versus Gore, and I'm only saying Gore, I don't know his first name. I've seen him fight before though. I think he's African. I think I saw him fight on his last fight actually. And then what else? Oh, and then Robbie Lawler versus Nico Price. I just saw this. Apparently this is going to be Robbie Lawler's last fight. I just told you when I started watching UFC. So he was a bit, he was a bit before my time. I've gone back and watched his fights. And obviously his fights are cool as fuck to watch. But when you don't see him in the moment, it's different. You know? But yeah, that is a great card. 290. The People's Main Event this weekend, Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. I can't even remember who Rosenstrike is fighting. That's not a diss to him, by the way. I've just been busy as fuck lately. But I know about Anthony Smith and Johnny Walker. Who else is on that card? Daniel Rodriguez is fighting too. I can't remember who he's fighting. I'm sure that'll pop up later. But yeah, the People's Main Event, yeah, I'm definitely way more excited for this fight. If for anything, just because I fuck with Believe You Me. I listen to that podcast. So that when you do that, you just start to feel like you know Anthony Smith more. So it just makes you more invested in the fight. I'm at 21 minutes, I just noticed this. I wanted to keep this one short. This is StanceSwitch, by the way. My name is Brandon. Follow me on Instagram, Brandon BLK Stone. That's my personal Instagram. I'm getting a StanceSwitch Instagram up and running. Conor McGregor getting physical with Chandler during the Ultimate Fighter, and it's that shove. That shit. After Robbie retires on July 8th, Kobe will have one win in 7 years over a fighter currently signed with UFC. RDA is who that's talking about. Basically, once Robbie retires, Kobe's only beat one active UFC fighter in 7 years. Everybody knows that Bilal is the rightful contender. He should be fighting Leon, and he should, and that'd be a cool fight, but he just didn't do himself any favors with the Gilbert fight. I know it was last minute. He's coming off Ramadan. People are saying the fight didn't even make sense to do in the beginning. I don't disagree, but the fact is he took the fight, and we all had to sit there and watch the fight, and that shit was bad. That was when I was watching that shit with my girl. That was an awful fight. What else we got? UFC 285, which is John Jones versus Cyril Gane, is the highest grossing commercial pay-per-view for UFC over the past 12 months. What do we got? Just a matter of time before Umar gets the belt. Ariel Helwani tells Merab not to accept an Umar fight. I should have played this out loud, I guess, if I'm going to play clips. Just Ariel basically explaining to Merab that he should be able to call the shots. Don't let the UFC bully you. Don't take a fight that makes no sense. He's been called out by, I know Cejudo has now since called out Merab, and so people are talking about that. Every time people talk about it, nobody's mentioning the Sandhagen call out. I haven't forgotten about Sandhagen. Khabib and Umar back training together at AKA. People were saying McGregor has roid rage and that's why he shoved Michael Chandler. Nate goes to the bathroom in the middle of his press conference with Jake Paul. I didn't watch. Usually I'll at least watch the clips or some shit like that. I ain't even watch the clips. I fuck with Nate Diaz, but and I'm gonna watch the fight, but I'm not interested in any of that dude. But why Blalashvili is going to fight Henry Cejudo? It's Marab talking about Cejudo and Sean Strickland. Nobody talking about Corey Sandhagen anymore. And then more people just talking about the show. All right, I'm gonna end this. This is StanceSwitch, the podcast. My name is Brandon. This is just my podcast, basically. You know, I'm gonna talk about UFC. I'm gonna talk about the major events going on. I just watched the promo for Devin Haney and Lomachenko. That's the biggest upcoming fight, if we're being real. I think that's on the 20th. So I'm recording this on the 10th. So in 10 days, I think, something like that. Haney versus Lomachenko. That's the biggest fight coming up. I'm gonna talk about that for sure the next time. This was just me going through UFC Reddit. Subscribe. Let me know what you want to see. Let me pause before I end this and just say I'm doing this podcast just because I feel like there aren't enough. After a big UFC event, not even just after a big UFC event, I just feel like I like to talk MMA. I like to talk UFC. And there's not a lot of people who can really talk UFC. You start talking to your average person about MMA, and they got Conor McGregor, and that's it. Ronda Rousey or something like that. And then they'll probably have who their dad used to watch, a Rampage or some shit like that. Nobody can really talk about, obviously not nobody, but it's rare to run into people who can really talk MMA. And that's why I feel like podcasts and shit like this are important, just because it gives you that outlet. You know, you can interact, leave comments, ask questions. You know what I mean? We could really build a community of people who like I said, I like the technique, I like the skill, I like watching high level fights. That's what I enjoy. So for all the people who enjoy shit like that, subscribe, comment, let me know what y'all want to see. Just get engaged in that kind of way, and I'm gonna keep making these. So I appreciate you watching.